Bentrovati amici dell'orrore! Questa puntata sarà una puntata speciale. Sì, perché vi mostreremo la video intervista con l'attore Andrew Gower. Colui che ha interpretato il ruolo di Sean Crenshaw nel magico film Monster Squad, uscito in Italia con il titolo di Scuola di Mostri. Questa intervista sarà suddivisa in 3 puntate, proprio perché la gentilezza e la disponibilità di André è stata tale da avere un buon 45 minuti di conversazione. Conversazione in cui ci ha raccontato molti aneddoti riguardanti la sua carriera, nonché del film Scuola di Mostri. Ecco a voi la nostra prima intervista internazionale. Signori e signori, Andrew Gower. Welcome by Master of Horror. This is my wife.
Hi.
And today we are with Andrew Gower. Whoa. Hi, Andrew.
Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you for giving us some of your time.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. I love to be involved with all sorts of different conversations, no matter where they're from. And, you know, why not Italy? It's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. It's a great honor for us to meet you in person and have the privilege of presenting you in Italy through the Horror channel, which is the first Italian horror social brand, followed by over 250,000 horror and fantasy fans, and organizer of the Vespertilio Awards, a sort of Oscar night dedicated to horror cinema, to be held in Rome on May 27.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds fantastic. And, you know, it's always nice to see genre fans in, you know, all over the world. And to have that many followers and, you know, genre fans in Italy alone, or that follow you, you know, specifically, that's a giant number. So congrats on that. And, you know, it sounds like a great group of people to hang out with.
Yeah. In Italy, there are not so many platforms for horror field. So horror is a quite big group for the fans of these kind of movies. So
great. That's wonderful.
So,
now let's talk about you.
Okay.
We know that you have begun your career as a child actor very young, and the age of 5 years. Is it correct?
That is correct. Yes, 5 years old. So it's been a while.
Oh.
And what was your first acting experience?
Well, I think technically my first job was a commercial for an American fast food chain called Jack in the Box. And I remember it a little bit, but not very well. But I have some pictures from it as, you know, a little tyke. But yeah, it was a fast food commercial, which, you know, back in the late 70s and early 80s on television here in the States, you know, fast food was and still is a gigantic market. And, you know, somewhat unfortunately that we eat a lot of fast food. But yeah, it was just a fast food commercial that I went on, you know, from there to do quite a few commercials and a lot of print work. There was a lot more picture taking and kind of modeling, if you will, for different products, because we had a lot more printed materials back then, way before the internet existed. And, you know, so yeah, advertising, magazines, newspapers, you know, brochures, you know, special flyers in the mail, things like that. So a lot of commercial work and a lot of print work in those early days, as well as some films and TV shows as well.
How did you know you wanted to be an actor?
Well, as I always say, since we've covered the fact that I started when I was 5, I don't know if those are the decisions, you know, that you're actually consciously making as a 5-year-old. I think what happens is you are put in these situations by other people, normally your parents. And if you enjoy it or you are comfortable with it, then you can kind of progress and continue along. The only reason that I started this or was involved in it at all is because my older sister, whose name is Carlina, she started, a number of years before I did, because she's a little bit older. And then I came along and just started being around it and being in the environment and that atmosphere of, auditions and commercials and print work, and started working a lot myself. And we actually did a few things together when we were very young, and it just kind of went from there. So, I wouldn't have had anything to do with the industry maybe if, she wasn't in it prior. And then I was just sort of next, we both had good careers as kids, and mine just kind of continued to kind of rise at the perfect time during the mid and late 80s. And then, we had very pre-internet, a lot of teen magazines and, a lot of exposure in that way, to fortunately be somewhat notable and to have some success, not only working, but with, some sort of status and recognizable, ability of, that you work enough and you get a fan following at a young age to be followed by the press or the media of the time.
What kind of training have you had to become an actor? Did you study acting?
Not too much. A lot of people that, look, there's an art, there's a craft, there's theory, and there's studies. Look, people get, college degrees and postgraduate degrees in, the craft of acting. And I didn't delve that much into the theory or in the schooling of it. I think because I started so young that it just started to become part of your world. And if it was a natural kind of exposure to it, then you just kind of learn what you're supposed to learn. But you read, and I think really my schooling and my education, and there were some classes and some workshops and working with people on auditioning or with working on scenes, which is always valuable. I think when you start very, very young and you're lucky enough to work a lot, most of your early education is that work experience and actually working across from other people who are older or more experienced or better. And some of that just kind of, you learn from that, or you get lessons, whether they're nice lessons or hard lessons. And, I fortunately, when I was very, very young, I worked a lot, and I got to work a lot with some really great people that you kind of have some takeaways from, and, you kind of learn a lot from as you go. Sometimes you don't know you're learning anything until much later.
Okay.
But it's not really an immediate effect, but you realize things, months or years later and go, aha, that's what they were talking about. So, but I think really for me personally, starting at a young age was just that kind of absorption of working with as many people as I did, whether they were other young actors or directors or great actors. And I got to work with a lot of great actors, over the years as a young kid.
All the experiences can teach something. So.
I think even no matter what your job is, we don't really know anything until you're doing that job, right? I mean, you can go to school to learn how to be an engineer, how to learn to be a pilot, how to learn to draw, cartoons, but until you're actually flying that plane or drawing up those city plans for a couple of years, you're not really, experience is the best teacher.
How did you join the cast of Monster Squad? You had to audition, I guess?
Absolutely. Back in that day, we go back to I think it was the summer of '86. I happened to be right sort of coming up to that kind of, top pinnacle of, being popular and working quite a bit, but you still audition for everything. And I remember getting, the scheduled appointment to go and audition for a movie. And at that time, I was probably, had 3, 4, 5, 6 auditions a week for different things, whether they were TV shows or films or commercials. And so this was, just, something that was on a Wednesday afternoon or something. But, we knew it was a big feature. And I think probably the day before I read for 2 other big features at the time, because at that time there was a small amount of kids in the industry. and an even smaller group of kids that did the bulk of the work. And I fortunately feel like I was in that kind of small group that was fortunate enough to be cast and have that experience and get to work a lot. And so I remember, reading for the Monster Squad and the audition process. And what a lot of Monster Squad fans know, and some don't know, is I never auditioned for the role of Sean Crenshaw. I never auditioned for the lead role. My original auditions and the callbacks and the screen tests were all for the role of Rudy. We're all for the cool kid. And there's a reason, because if you look at my body of work leading directly up to the casting times of Monster Squad, I was the cool kid with the great, hair product and leather jacket, maybe some cool clothes. And that just sort of was an automatic kind of, match to read for that role. Well, I went in and read and screen tested and met with, all the executives on the film as Rudy. And a few weeks later, got the phone call that I had got cast in this movie, but not for the role that I auditioned for.
Okay.
And usually that's a nice thing, but it's usually a bad thing, because you're usually getting a lesser role or a smaller role because they liked something that you did, but someone came in for that role and they're going to give you a different side role. And they said, no, they straight cast you as the lead, as the Sean Crenshaw character. And, I was a little bummed at the time because Rudy was the cool character.
Yeah, okay.
Look, everybody wants to be Rudy, including all the kids that were auditioning for Rudy at the time, like myself. So they had to convince me over a day or two that, no, this was a good thing, that I got the lead in the movie instead of, the co-star. But I know why I was not Rudy. Could I have played Rudy? Sure. I would have played this, kind of, shticky, kind of laid back California version of Rudy. But Ryan Lambert, my good friend, went into that audition and nailed it and became Rudy in that moment. And, we've talked about these audition stories over the years, and they're fascinating. What's interesting with my case is that I never auditioned for Sean, yet somebody in the group that making decision, whether it was the casting director, whether it was Fred Decker or Shane Black or Peter Hyams, the producer, thought back and said, okay, now we've got to cast the lead. We've read, dozens and dozens of kids for Sean, and they didn't really pick one. They couldn't really come to a consensus of who would be the best pick for them. And someone in that group said, what about that kid that auditioned for Rudy, but we cast this other kid? Could Andre be Sean Crenshaw? And they decided that was their answer. And that's a very fortunate, conversation for me, because I got to be the lead in an awesome film. Got to meet Ryan Lambert, who, became the cool kid Rudy, and we've been friends ever since. And the Monster Squad has grown into this, kind of, cult phenomenon over the last 30 something years. And that wouldn't have happened if that conversation didn't take place. So
now you are satisfied about this decision?
Yeah, I think it worked out okay. I think it worked out just fine. I think what ended up, I realized, even as we were shooting the movie, I think everybody ended up in the exact right spot.